Thank you, thank you. This is Dr. Eveangel Savage right here on Evidence TV. We are live with Sparkle D. Smith, an amazing young woman who is an education consultant with a high concentration on culturally responsive teaching. Sparkle Smith obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in social work from the College of Education at Southern University at Carbondale, Illinois. We are so excited to have her. She's also the independent owner of Josiah's Education Consulting. Welcome, Sparkle. How are you?
Thank you, Dr. Eve. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. You are so welcome. We are living during a time where we are seeing administration change drastically as it relates to education. And here at Audacity Leadership Institute, one of our mottos is to affirm human social values. So critical. With everything that's going on, it's good to have persons like yourself who are astute in the area to share with our public what's really going on, some of the concerns, some of the successes, gaps, and recommendation. And we are just excited to learn more about your perspective. Thank you for coming and welcome, Sparkle. Share a little bit with our audience about who you are.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Well, as you said before, I am an educational consultant, and I started off in the area of social work. So education is a helping profession. And so I started off in the area of social work. And then once I moved, and I enjoyed social work, helping others, serving others. Once I moved to the state of Minnesota, I began to substitute teaching. And then I fell in love with education and educating children and students. So then I went on to get my master's in education with a focus on urban learning. And so what happened is, my background in education, K through 12, was so different than most students of color background, because I grew up, most of my teachers, the principals, African American, the assistant principal, most of them were, people of color. So they encourage you, they respected and value your culture. So I never had an issue where I was treated impartial in the classroom because of race, culture, things of that nature. But when I began to substitute teach, the kids who were of students of color, they were just drawn to me, and I would see some of the biases played out. And I felt like, okay, well, I want to be an educator. I want to make a difference for these children because they need to see a teacher of color to motivate them to learn and to help them and to affirm them. But then as I began to get into research in the master's level, there was a lot of extensive work we had to do on something called the achievement gap. And so the achievement gap has really affected our nation now with the change in legislation, where it's almost like legislation is trying to make the educational system, the public educational system, turn it into a capitalist system where those children living below the poverty line won't be able to afford education at all. And so that was the main reason why I began to obtain a master's degree in education, because of the achievement gap. And I felt like, well, my background was nothing like that. I didn't have to struggle educationally. I excel academically. Both teachers of color and Caucasian teachers, affirmed me. But I think that had a lot to do with these teachers of color who were the primary group of teachers in our school. And so it just hurt my heart that students of color were really lagging behind. And it wasn't just because of academically. On paper, it says that it's academically. Their test scores are lower compared to their white counterpart students, peers. But in actuality, research has shown, and there's several scholars in the field of culturally responsive teaching that I had to study, such as James A. Banks. He's a scholar in the field of culturally responsive teaching. Gloria Ladson Billings, Geneva Gay, Sonia Nieto. They've studied culturally responsive teaching, and they've actually applied it. So it's not just something that they say, okay, well, if the teachers do this, appreciate the culture of the students, that'll break barriers to learning, and that'll motivate students of color to learn, and will increase the academic success of students of color, thereby narrowing this achievement gap that we have. And these scholars have done decades of work to prove this. And it's not just by researching and saying this is what worked, but they actually went out to classrooms incorporated it into the classroom. And they've also spotted other teachers, and it's been teachers of color and as well as Caucasian teachers who really want to be agents of change for students of color, increase their academic success by understanding the concept of culturally responsive teaching. And so as a result of their work and their extensive researches and their hands-on actually going to the classroom and educating the teachers how to do this, it has increased the academic success of students of color. And that's pretty much a lot of my work that I do. I mean, I do education consulting on every level. If a teacher, you know, a parent who wants their child homeschool, needs resources, I can research it and help them get the help they need. If a student is entering college and don't know, you know, what test to take or what direction, or need to be guided through the application process, I can help. But my number one passion is culturally responsive teaching.
Absolutely.
So what I do is I go out to teachers, educators, administrative staff, universities, childcare centers. I mean, because babies even are learning. Once they come out of the womb, they're learning, they're connecting, and you know, parents send their kids off to daycare. And sometimes biases and cultural misunderstandings can happen even as early as a child 6 weeks old. So I go out and I educate them on the importance of understanding culture, the importance of being not just accepting of culture, because sometimes they think, oh, if you just have, you know, the dishes, the food, the cuisine of a different cultural group, or you wear their dress, style of dress or clothes, or, you know, that can be a form of entertainment. I mean, it's a part of culture, but the main culture is their values, their beliefs. You know, every culture has attributed something great to society. We have great mathematicians, great inventors, great scientists, great world leaders, Nobel Peace Prizes in the African American community, as well as every student of color community. And that type of thing needs to be broadcast into the classroom so students will not look like, okay, well, I don't come from a community that is doing anything. You know, I come from a rich history, and that needs to be educated into the classroom, which will be a factor for students to learn, thus increasing test scores and in every area of concentration in education academia.
Wow. You've covered so much. It was like, okay, I really can't stop her, because she's really, the information that you are providing is so impactful. I mean, I can tell that this program of culturally responsive teaching is something that actually is not that old. I don't think it is. I think that is it? Can you tell me if it is?
No, it's not that old as far as being known and trending in the public. But I mean, like I said, scholars like James A. Banks, he's been doing the research since the 70s. And there's been scholars that have been doing the research since the 70s, but I don't think that it's been acknowledged or understood or implemented till recent times. I'd say early 2000s, late 90s, a little bit late 90s.
Exactly, because I have been seeing, actually did a study on culturally responsive programming for mothers, teen mothers.
Oh,
so
great.
That was actually my first discovery of culturally responsive anything, which I think is absolutely critical, because we know as researchers that, you know, what works with one population may not necessarily work with another. Right. So even in the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programmings and Practices, that is so. So that's why a lot of the programs become NREPP ready, because they have studied a particular population. They've ruled out that it may not work with this population, but will work with this one. And because we are a very, very different population of people, diverse group of people, it is imperative that we be thinking along those lines. So I'm really excited about the work that you are sharing, the work that you've done. So tell me, is this particular program that's in the school system, is that considered a evidence-based program?
You mean culturally responsive teaching?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely evidence-based. There's a lot of research, and actually not only the scholars that I shared, but these are kind of like I guess you want to say founding fathers or mothers,
right,
of culturally responsive pedagogy, because they've even developed and patented framework and copywritten it. And I'll share some of that once we wrap up. Laura Lasted doing some of her work, because she actually didn't just study it, but she put out a guideline that in order for it to be culturally responsive, in order for a teacher to say that they're culture responsive, it has to meet 3 criteria. So it's definitely evidence-based. And then as I've been studying even more, reading more peer-reviewed articles, I've saw other teachers have been developing evidence-based. And there's one teacher, Caucasian English teacher, she develops, she shared research on something called cultural mismatches. And cultural mismatches is something that's been researched and documented as, let's say, for example, you have a white teacher and a student of color. The student of color, you know, they have a strong personality. They're loud. They're, you know, they're talking when they're doing their work. And if a student, a white teacher doesn't understand this student, they'll end up in the principal's office every day. And that's going to be a barrier to their learning, and it's going to go on their record. But a teacher that's going to research and understand, interview their family, what's going on, is this a part of his personality, you know, and try to engage the student and, you know, bring a level balance into the classroom, and maybe use his strong personality and have him do leadership, use that as a vehicle of a leadership capability in the classroom.
Right.
So,
when I was in the middle school teaching, I remember actually making these observations myself about how there was a growing population of children that I was finding in the behavioral modification programs. And I thought it strange because a lot of these children were very, very smart, but yet they were in these behavior programs. How much of, let me see if I can reframe that. How much of the standard teaching across a system affects how a child learns? How much? Well, let me reframe that again.
I know what you're saying, though.
I'm pretty sure you do. But as an AG parent, I'm an AG parent, academically gifted. What I learned about my daughter was that she is just as susceptible to failure as a child with an actual learning disability, right? Because if she is not given the proper care or teaching that aligns with her level of her intellectual ability, then you may find her off doing something that she's not supposed to because she is bored. There's not a program, like she can't sit idle. She would sit idle and not have anything to do. She's more susceptible to getting into trouble or finding other things to do. Tell me how much of the standardized education affects children. What's the correlation, or is there a correlation for the children who are in those behavior modification programs?
Yeah, and I would say so, and I'm glad you even brought up the gifted and talented, because students of color are often overrepresented in special ed programs and then underrepresented in gifted and talented. And then that could go either way on either spectrum, because if, like you said, if you don't understand the gifts and the talents and, you know, customize children individually and understand their learning and individually, teaching the whole child and understanding what their weaks and strengths are, even for gifted children, like you said, they can struggle. They're going to be more advanced than everybody. They're going to complete their work much quicker. So they have to be, the teacher has to be gifted to be able to engage them as well, or they'll go off course just as well. And then it's kind of similar with the students of color. You know, if you don't understand a gifted child's attributes and engage them on every level, you know, the teacher will struggle, and the children may struggle at some level. But then also students of color, if the teachers don't understand their culture,
right,
they're going to struggle academically, and they're not going to be able to come up to par because of that barrier of misunderstanding of that child's culture. So, I mean, the misunderstanding, because most teachers are white teachers. They come in most of their training is coming from suburbia school system, and then they for some reason get into the public urban school system, and they still have that suburbia school system mindset, which is totally culturally different.
The bias.
Yeah, so that's a major, I say at least 50%. And I'll quote you because I know in one of your broadcasts you were saying you can't blame, I mean, conspiracy theory a little bit may have a little bit to do with it, absolutely, but you can't blame the teachers totally, because then there's parent responsibility. There's the whole dynamic of different integral parts that play a whole responsibility. But I say at least 50%, just due to cultural mismatch, attributes to the lack of academic success for students of color, whether they're gifted, special ed, or average.
Right, right. So I'm thinking, and here's just my philosophy and my take, is that I believe that there are more of the children who are in these behavioral modification programs belong in these AG programs.
Absolutely.
If we had more culturally responsive programs.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we doing about getting these types of programs across disciplines, across the United States of America and abroad?
Yeah, well, actually, there's not a whole lot that has been done, in the past. Oftentimes, I know Geneva Gay, she's out of Seattle, Washington. She's one of the founding mothers of cultural responsive teaching. And I know she tried to do a lot politically to influence legislation, to pass bills and policy, to actually enforce it into their school systems. She got some pushback. She wrote an article on it also. So the barrier is, I think what we do with culture responsive teaching, we typically try to go through the school districts, whether it's at the superintendent level, the principal level, mainly the school district level, and try to really promote it at that end. But I mean, ideally, to get it into legislation would be great. But the problem is they're looking more so at, test scoring. What can you do? I mean, it's going to help test scoring, but it's not at the beginning level. It's on the back end.
So we're not, I hear you saying that the program exists, but there's no legislature to enforce the practice.
Because it's not looked at as, in most legislation, ballot. Mm-hmm. They're looking at it as, because a lot of the cultural responsive teaching is qualitative research, which is, is evidence-based, but it's
the voices. I think voices are important. I'm a qualitative researcher, and I like the voices over quantity, because the numbers can be distorted.
Right.
So when I hear the voices of those who are in the system, like yourself, if I were to have 15 interviews from educators who are in the same field of culturally responsive teaching, I'm going to look for the themes that emerge from what you're saying to come up with, my take on what emerges from that evidence. And then it becomes evidence, because I'm hearing, because you're experienced, you're in the field, what's going on. So that's what a qualitative researcher does. But in the quantitative, they're looking at secondary data or observations. It may be distorted. Their numbers are coming from that secondary database source, which who knows? How is that put together?
Right.
How was that designed? What's that experiment look like? So when I'm one-on-one with you and I'm asking the same set of questions to 15 of the people who meet that same criteria that you do, then I'm likely to get some real thematic data, some real good, rich data that I can go and report to the public. And that's what I did with my research. And so, and I look at how the facilitators of even for the substance abuse, they didn't think that integrating technology was a good thing, because they thought it was a non-humanistic approach. But look at where we are.
Right.
Now we're counseling online. We're medicine online. We're tele everything online, right? So what they thought wouldn't work is now a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing the voices of individuals like yourself in qualitative research is absolutely amazing. So, and I know that you can generalize to a population in quantitative research because you have the sample size and it meets all that great criteria of internal and external validity. But the most important thing is hearing people like yourself. You're amazing. This is a field, an untapped field, market that we're introducing that we need to hear more about. Our parents need to know that they have a fair chance. Or what would you suggest to a parent who's a part of a system whose child they know they have the ability, but because of cultural misunderstanding or cultural mismatch, as you have stated, what's the recommendation? What do you recommend to those parents?
I would say parents have more power and authority than they realize. I would say make good relationships with the principal. If they're getting pushed back with the principal, have a talk with the district, find out who the superintendent is, who in the district, is the leaders in the district, write letters, really research and seek out, culture responsive teaching, and let them know my child needs this. Your teachers need to be educated on this. Your district, when they have like the district days where the kids don't come in, but the teachers stay in on those days, and they get training. And actually, that's what I do. I do some training on their days where they have those
in service.
Yes, in service is what it's called. Thank you. And so I do some of the teaching. So parents need to let their districts know, their superintendents know, write letters. You need to find culture responsive educators, consultants to bring your educators up
to par. Yes, yes. And so that's where you come in.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're just absolutely amazing. Thank you for being
Thank you. So are you.
Welcome. And I love the topic. I love what you're doing. And I want to know, with the culturally responsive opportunities, do you think that this will be a game changer for the children who are in the behavioral modification programs? Do you think it will allow parents an option for testing? Because like I had my daughter tested, and see here, let me go reframe that again. I had my daughter tested because the system told me that they could not. They were going to teach her standardized education, even though she was reading at 3 on I don't know what level, but she was amazing. Okay.
Wow.
And they said that they could not teach her any differently than they taught the next child. And I said, well, that can't be so.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to exercise my right.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the system and I said, hey, listen, what do I have to do? My daughter can't sit in your classroom and vegetate. Mm-hmm. So they said to get her tested. And at that time, they had what's called testing within the school system, some type of psych test that they did through the social workers. And she, off the chart, she was really amazing. She did an absolutely amazing job. The concern was, is she socially ready? Now, that was our concern. Mm-hmm. And since she's not socially ready to move up these grades, what can we do to help her? So they developed an IEP specifically for her. It would take her out of the classroom to different classes during reading and during math so that she could be challenged. And as a matter of fact, they would gas up a bus for this one child to take her to another school for the AG program. But these are the things that our parents don't know.
Right.
So my thing is, if a parent recognizes that their child has that same ability but yet the system is saying they have behavioral. They don't see it because all they see is conduct, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, does that parent have that same leverage?
Absolutely. I mean, you're a prime example. You recognize your authority. You recognize there's got to be some type of alternative. I don't know if you knew who to talk to, but you said you went to the district or you went to the principal, and then they did her testing. So they didn't do like a standardized testing with her. They did like a question and answer.
They did a full scale intellectual IQ test.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of parents don't know that, right? But sometimes with testing, I mean, it's great that it worked out for her. Sometimes testing can be a catch-22 because even gifted and talented students, not all of them are great test takers.
Yeah, I have one that's not a great tester, but she's
Yeah,
academically gifted.
right. And so that could be,
Yeah, you're right.
a catch-22. I mean, sometimes it can, if they take it, they fall up the charts, but then they can still be gifted and talented. But there's different learning styles too. Like, some children learn musically, some learn kinesthetically. There's different types of, there's multiple learning style, learning preferences that students have.
Yes, I was
But
audio.
okay, yeah, audio. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think parents still should do what you did. Don't take no for an answer.
Right.
Seek out, more alternatives. Put a demand on the school system. So if they don't pass the test, well, that doesn't mean that they're not academically gifted. Let's find another way to implement and understand and bring out their skills. Let's do another type of test taking. Bringing gifted, talented experts, some type of expert that has an ability to pull out their students that are gifted, talented, and bring them out and to be able to pull them up academically or help them so that they can be just as academically successful as the other gifted and talented students. So absolutely, parents don't know, most parents don't know the authority and the impact that they can provide in their child's learning.
So I hear you saying that, one, we need to have more teachers educated on culturally responsive education.
Mm-hmm.
Two, our parents have an alternative. Yeah. Now, you're an independent expert.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you offer like webinars and teleclasses and things like that where you could actually educate parents online if they have a option? Is that an option?
Absolutely. I have a website. It's called Josiah's, JOSIAHS. It's just no apostrophe or anything. JOSIAHS, and then educational consulting.bpweb.com. I'll repeat that again. Josiah's, JOSIAHS, educational, EDUCATIONAL, consulting, consulting.bpweb.com. And if they go to the website, they can look at the website, see what I do. And then there's a contact me. They can put in their name, their number, their information, their email address. And I offer 20-minute free consultations with parents, community members, even legislatures if they want to implement this into the school districts or on a higher level to pass a law to get this into the school district one day, hopefully, prayerfully. But, educators, staff members, things of that nature. And yes, absolutely, I'm looking for parents.
Well, that's wonderful. Do you ever think that maybe offering a once a month town hall?
Yes, via webinar, absolutely.
Like just a town hall, because you have some parents who may not be able to afford it, but they still need to be likened to that same type of information.
Absolutely.
That you could provide like maybe a once a month opportunity where they would come and maybe you could give them latest and the greatest, or maybe not latest and the greatest, but some updates on what's going on beyond the not beyond your scope of your practice in terms of your what they need to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
You have your paid and your non-paid versions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I still think people like yourself who are specializing in an area like this, maybe should have a platform where you're talking to parents and updating them all the time so that they know what their rights are. So I think the more we are out there and visible, that we can that's then and only then that we can publicly have reform.
Yes.
And I say that because I remember the grassroots initiative when I started my nonprofit agency for the youth and family development center. And if I had not politically made the statement that I did with the nonprofit agency, then we would have never had, I don't think, a Boys and Girls Club in that area, because it was without it. There was a rural area without any Boys and Girls Club. And I mean, within a 50-mile radius, there was nothing. And so somebody had to make the statement that, hey, listen, we have a population of children in 6 schools over here that does not have any after school because they're too old, or they don't have transportation to participate in an after school program, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need a place that's going to have the buses and the public and the this and the that and the safety and the nets. We need all that. But had I not been out there and visible, then we would not have had that type of reform for that area. So that might be a good opportunity for you. I'm just putting some little.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and that's good. Like you said, parents, they need the information, and so I'd be, open to for them. I always love parents contacting me, and starting a webinar, a monthly webinar would be great for them.
Yeah, a little town hall meeting, and then getting into them schools, finding your way, because you have what they need,
right?
And they don't know who you are, so we want them to know who you are.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then getting the parents can get the word out to the districts too.
Yes. So tell our listening audience, we are listening to an amazing young woman who is a specialist in the research area of education and with culturally responsive education, which we don't hear much about. So if you are out there in our listening audience, Sparkle Smith is an amazing contact, and she's going to be doing some great things right here in our global sphere, where we can reach the masses, because it's all about using what we have in our hands to reach the masses of people around the world and abroad. We live everywhere. So with that said, we are just delighted to have you, Sparkle. If you want to close us out with any tidbits that you may have about the system and where they can find you once again.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Eve.
You're welcome.
I just want to say again, if you are interested in keeping up with future webinars, town halls, parents, teachers, community members, educators, please visit my website, Josiah's Educational Consulting. You want to go there by typing josiahsconsulting.bpweb.com. Again, that's josiahsconsulting.bpweb.com. And I'll be putting a calendar up soon of events, of different meetings and webinars. And you don't want to miss that information. And it's also been forecasted that by 2050 that our students, our children, won't be like, we consider the minority students of color, and then the majority students, Caucasian students. But actually by 2050, it's been predicted that will no longer be. It'll be maybe 50-50, or maybe students of color will be, as far as children in the population, well over 50%. So there'll be no more minority majority. So it's imperative for educators who are normally Caucasian to get educated and become culturally competent if they want to truly see any academic success of students of color. Like I said, culture responsive teaching it has to meet certain criteria. And I was going to, it has to validate culture. You have to see academic success of students of color, and the culture has to be used as a vehicle of learning. So it's not just enough for those teachers to understand, oh, I know about this, and this goes on in students of color culture. Okay, well, how are you taking that information and using it as a bridge to learning? Okay, I understand how students of color are, some of them. So I'm not going to be quick to pull the trigger and send them off to the principal's office. I'm going to help them, and it's going to decrease behavioral problems in my classroom and increase academic success. So I encourage you, for the sake of our children, and not just students of color, because even, the achievement gap, it can affect Caucasian students, because if they're not culturally connected when they get out into the workplace, they may have barriers socially to understanding their coworkers, colleagues, etc. So it's not just something that helps students of color. I mean, absolutely it helps them, but it helps our whole nation, world as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. We are listening again to Sparkle D. Smith, an amazing educator and expert in culturally competent education. And again, she has we're going to ask that if you have questions, to please leave them in the comment section below. And it doesn't matter which platform we're on, Ms. Smith will be available to answer any of your questions. We're going to drop the website and all of her information below in the different platforms, so that you're able to reach out to her. Thank you so much again. This is Dr. Eveangel Savage on episode 5 of Evidence TV, where we are sharing the world, or bringing the world to you, and looking at real life solutions right here on Evidence TV. If this is something that you'd like to participate in, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at tinyurl.com/have-the-courage, where we train others, leaders, service-based professionals to own their stage and reach the masses through independent contractual services. We're excited about the things that are going on at Audacity Leadership Institute, and we hope that you will join us. Thank you again. That's tinyurl.com/have-the-courage. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you again, Ms. Smith, for an amazing interview.
Thank you, Dr. E.
You're welcome.